reading a really good book called Viking Women by Lisa Hannett, which is a retelling of Viking stories, specifically about women. Now, I discussed the fact that I was reading this book with someone today, and that brought up two other books, one of which was Norse Mythology by Neil Gaiman, which I thought was excellent, and the other one is the subject of today's review, The Gospel of Loki by Joanne M. which I didn't think was excellent. In fact, it annoyed me significantly, and I was very disappointed. So if you loved Joanna M. Harris's version of Norse mythology and you don't want to hear me trash talking it, I recommend you go away right now, because I'm going to say exactly what I didn't like about it, and you may not be able to unhear it. Who knows? But if you're willing to bear with me, I'm not going to give any spoilers because A, it's been out for a while, and B, I don't think you can spoil a book that is basically a retelling of Norse mythology. It's like, how do you spoiler the fact that Loki is a trickster? Don't think it's going to happen. How do you spoiler the fact that Loki and Odin and Thor are the primary characters? Not really. So, here we go. I was very disappointed by this book. I liked Joanna M. Harris when she wrote Chocolat. I thought that was a great book. So I was mildly hopeful. This book was recommended to me by Goodreads as a readers also enjoyed, from The Golem and the Djinn. As far as I'm concerned, the only similarities between these two books appear to be that both draw on mythic figures. The writing, plot development, and character descriptions were rather superficial. They were utterly superficial in The Gospel of Loki when you compare to the rich beauty of The Golem and the Djinn. The other thing that made this recommended to me is the fact that I've actually read most of the Norse sagas. I might have missed one or two, but I've read most of them. And I should probably spend less time comparing this to other books, but it's really hard not to, because this is meant to be Loki's side of the saga stories, which often paid him in less than flattering terms because he's a trickster, so he tricks people and he does dishonest things. And as I am into Viking history and Norse mythology, I felt that this could be very good. Telling them all from the point of view of Loki is going to be different because he is a key character. He's an integral, complex character without whom the Norse mythology would lack a lot of its dynamic integrity. Because of his trickster element, he is the foil without which these stories couldn't really achieve fairy tale type status, which is what the sagas were to a certain extent. I thought that Loki would be especially suitable to retell these stories in a modern voice because of his random, erratic element. Didn't work out that way. Loki is a really exciting character. The Norse myths are full on exciting, but in the Gospel of Loki, the first few chapters were actually rather dull. All we learned is that the gods were not nice people, and that Odin cheated him. To anyone who's actually read the sagas, the fact that the gods were not nice is no surprise, and that Odin in especial is terrifyingly not nice. Well, duh! He's the head god. Niceness is not associated with head gods of any type of mythology. Anyway, yeah. So the language of the book is cheerful and modern, which is a thing that I can be quite on board with story retellings, and which does not bother me as such here. So, does it, doesn't it? Yes, I mean, it does in the end, but it's not the fact that the language is told in modern terms. It's just the fact that there's a superficiality to it. So, if you really love the language of the Gospels, and I've got to say it's beautiful and it's lyrical and it's poetic, if you can't see yourself enjoying a novel where Loki is told to chillax by Balder, maybe skip this one. I kind of regret that I didn't. Which leads to the thing that I was most disappointed by. The writing and the story are very superficial. it's not just chillaxing and language more suited to a young adult story. It's the entirely one-dimensional element to all these characters. Their inability to add the complexity and dynamic elements of all the Norse gods, an inability, I suspect, to comprehend. I don't think Joanne M. Harris actually comprehends the true richness of these stories. So while they're entirely from Loki's viewpoint, they don't actually retell or expand on anything. They just recapitulate the sagas, and they don't add dimension to the story. They actually diminish them by having little added content and leaving out the original strength of character as well as the beautiful language. So you get no insight into any of these characters, and how you manage to make something that's modern, written in modern language, more superficial than the sagas, which aren't known for character development. I really don't know how, and I don't know why. I don't see why you would choose to expand on old fairy tales and lessen them rather than increasing their beauty. So yeah. So there's none of the descriptive brilliance that so delighted me in the book this was meant to be like, and there was no exploration of humanity at all. It's impossible to believe in any humanity in any of them, and sure, they're gods and ice giants, but the sagas are intensely human. Thor and Odin are manifestations of elements of humanity. There's no inner voyage to any of them, especially not Loki, who is the titular character. He is the one who his inner void should be exposed in a way that we miss out on in the sagas, because the sagas are casting him as the trickster. This should be him telling his side of it, and it really isn't. So, to me, the whole notion of retelling old myths is to make them more accessible and to give them greater dimension, to make them live and breathe for the modern day reader in the way that they would have lived and breathed for the people in, I don't know, the 9th century, the 10th century, sitting around the fire at night, or in the longhouse in the long winter dark, telling stories, the stories of the gods. Because back then, fairy tales weren't just for children. Fairy tales were for everyone. They lived to entertain and inform and bond societies together. But the Gospel of Loki fails to do any of these things. Nothing is achieved here. And my perfect example, which I wrote down in my review on Goodreads, is on completion of the story of the building of Valhalla. I'm very fond of the story of the building of the Valhalla, and it totally emphasizes how not nice the gods were. They employed an ice giant to do it for him on the agreement that he had to do it within a certain time period, or they would get it for free. They didn't think he could do it, but it turned out that he could, because he had this amazing horse called, I'm not going to pronounce this right, I'm really not, Svathilfari. If any of you out there speak Icelandic or Norse, tell me how wrong I am by all means. But anyway, so he had this amazing strong horse that could do all the duty, and he was building Valhalla on the time schedule that he'd set, and the gods were going to owe him money, and I don't think they even had that money. That's how nice the gods were. So they sent Loki the trickster out after the guy, and he distracted the horse in ways that I can't describe adequately in YouTube. But what Snorri Snorrelson's Prose Edda described it as, Loki, however, had had such dealings with Svathilfari that some time later he bore a foal. Loki pretended to be a female, a mare in heat. It's a great story, and I love Snorri Snorrelson's Prose Edda and how he describes it. What Joanne M. Harris, however, does with this is the Gospel of Loki. Loki. I took one for the team. Heimdall. Smart ass. Ouch! Ouch! It burns! It's so bad. I mean, why? Why? Why take Snorri Sturluson's beautiful words and turn them into a 10-year-old's dirty joke? Ouch! So anyway, she's a very accredited author. This random person on YouTube disliking one of her books, it's not going to make any difference to her life, I'm sure. It may make a difference to your life if you haven't read the Gospel of Loki and you love the prose Edda. And I think it comes really down to the fact, do you enjoy reading the myths as rich, challenging prose with complex concepts, intricate motivations, and damn near unpronounceable names, or the exact, unadulterated same stories with slipstick modern characters, contemporary slang, and no depth? It's not a bad book. It is not badly written or badly done. If you're not into Norse mythology, or if all you've ever done is watch that HBO TV series Vikings, and you're just mildly curious about Norse mythology, this may not matter to you. You might quite enjoy it, but it lacks emotional intelligence. It really does. So that's me whining about Joanne M. Harris's very successful book, The Gospel of Loki, for 10 minutes. Personally, I infinitely preferred Neil Gaiman's interpretation of the Norse gods, whether in his Norse mythology or American gods. I feel like he understands mythology in a way that Joanne M. Harris doesn't. Perhaps it's foolish of me to expect someone who wrote something like Chocolat so very well to be able to transition into the 9th, 10th century mentality and to, I think it was the 11th and 12th century mentality in which they were written down. I was angry at the end of this book, and I resented it. And I didn't keep it. That's why I can't wave it around in front of you. However, it may be the book for you. You may have loved it. Tell me why. For goodness sake, tell me why.